Hello, everyone. So you made it through week one of our study on Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. I just want to say that it was such a joy to be able to read some of your responses to the discussion questions. I did go through and respond throughout the week to some of those, so hopefully you've had a chance to go back and look at some of the responses from myself. I also noticed that several of you responded to each other, and so that was really great. If you haven't had a chance to look through some of the responses from your classmates, I do encourage you to do that as well. There was a lot of really great discussion, and I think the more we get into this class, the more comfortable you'll feel with it, or at least that's my hope, at any rate. And um, and so, yeah, if you have any questions or concerns or things, or if you're having trouble with something in particular, please let me know. It seems as though everything's been going pretty well, though. Overall, I'm really happy with how this first week of class has gone. And so I do notice that there was a couple of you who registered and signed into the class but haven't done any of the responses. And it might just mean that you didn't have a lot of time this week, and that's perfectly okay. But if you do have any questions or you're having some trouble, please don't hesitate to let me know. I do want to thank Claudia for responding or letting me know with some of her concerns on this, and hopefully I've answered those. I posted a video in the stream, which is on the very front page of the classroom with kind of description of her questions and then my response to those things. So I posted it there because I felt like it would be beneficial to the entire class. So this week week two, which begins on 10:9 through 10:15. We are looking through chapter 2 in the study guide and then chapters 10 through 15 in Proverbs. I think there's something that I hope that we can kind of keep front and center. The study guide kind of reminded me of this, but all throughout the class, I think it's important to remember that wisdom, right? The heart of Proverbs and the source of wisdom is God, right? Um, Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. The beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. Now, fear doesn't mean being scared of God. Fear basically means to have God, hold God in awe, in wonder, in importance, in respect, right? The author of the book writes, the fear of the Lord in Proverbs is associated with knowledge. Truly to know God is to grow in awe of God. I guess there might even be a little bit of fear involved with that, just because when there's something that we don't understand, right? When we are encountering a God that is so big and so, um, just full of mystery, and sometimes and the book talks about this. Sometimes we encounter God in such a way where we catch a tiny glimpse of just how big God is, and it can be kind of scary, but also really comforting because to know that God, right, that God of infinite possibility, loves us individually and as a community, and just wants nothing more than a relationship with us. So sometimes that is just really, really powerful. So Proverbs itself, at chapters 10 through 15, there was a lot of really good stuff in there as I read through that in preparation for this video. Proverbs, I think just has so much stuff in there. We say a lot of general truths in these proverbs, things that generally hold true the more you look at them. But sometimes we also know that even though they're generally true, that they generally hold true, there are always exceptions, right? So let's look at Proverbs 10:22. It says, "The Lord's blessing makes people rich, and no trouble is added to it." Well, that kind of gears a little bit towards kind of like this prosperity gospel. You might have heard of prosperity gospel. The prosperity gospel says that if you are just faithful enough, if you pray enough, if you are faithful enough to God, that God will bless you with riches and bless you with so many things. And if you're not blessed, then you must have done something wrong, right? And so a big proponent of the prosperity gospel is Joel Osteen, right? He is this big proponent of the idea that, you know, God will bless you with so many wonderful things if only you remain faithful, if only you are generous. And so, he's one of those pastors that makes a lot of money doing what he does. So at any rate, so some of these things do hold true. I mean, I think overall, the Lord's blessing makes people rich. I think when we think of wealth, I think we can question really kind of what that means. It might mean material wealth, but it also might mean wealth in relationships, right? Wealth in many other things. It could be anything really, but I think in general, the more we do have a strong and deep and abiding relationship with God, the more our lives are richer for it. Now, that's not always the case, but I think in general that is true. Um, there's a couple other things that, I think I encouraged you maybe last week to just go through as you're reading through the Proverbs chapters to highlight those proverbs that really stuck out to you that you really appreciate. And so I highlighted some, and I just wanted to share a few of those with you before I end this very short video introduction to this week. And the first one is about constructive criticism, and there was several times that this idea came up. I remember early in my ministry, I really I hated criticism. I hated it because I always felt really bad. I felt guilty. I felt inadequate. I think in general we want people to like us, right? And when we get criticism, it makes us feel bad. So we either avoid it or we don't want to hear it. But as I've grown and I've matured in my role as a leader and my role as a Christian, I've come to really appreciate criticism. It's still not my most favorite thing in the world, but I've learned to take criticism with a grain of salt, to learn from that criticism, because people generally, I like to think, are offering constructive criticism as a way to help you grow. And I oftentimes think when I get a little bit big-headed myself, when somebody offers me a bit of criticism, then that helps to humble me. And I always look at that maybe as God's way of saying, you know what, Kurt, you're getting a bit too big for your britches there, and you need to just lower yourself back down. And so here were two proverbs that I really love. And so this one is chapter 12, verse 1. Those who love discipline love knowledge, and those who hate correction are stupid. And then chapter 15, verse 32 says, those who refuse discipline despise themselves, but those who listen to correction gain understanding. And it has been my understanding and my experience that if we take criticism in and say, okay, well, what can I learn from this? It helps to soften the blow. Because I think it takes a bit of humility to recognize and to really admit to yourself, right, that we're not perfect. We do make mistakes in life, and so it's helpful when people point out those things in a loving way. Of course, there are folks who like to criticize just for the sake of criticism, and don't do it in a loving way. But those who really do care for us, those who really want to see us succeed, do offer criticism that is constructive, criticism that we can take and internalize and learn from so that we can become better people. And I think that's the type of criticism we should accept. Just like it says, those who love discipline love knowledge. Those who refuse discipline despise themselves. But those who listen to correction gain understanding. And so when we listen to correction, when we listen to criticism, and we um, allow it to help us to improve, then we are doing good. The other thing I noticed in there was you've all probably heard the saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. Well, that actually comes from Proverbs. It's in the Bible. It's Proverbs 13:24. It says, those who withhold the rod hate their children, but those who love them apply discipline. And so, of course, the general precept of this proverb is that if we just let our children run wild and we don't offer them correction, much like the previous proverbs that I just read, if we don't offer that to them, then it doesn't do them any good, because then they don't learn how to live in society, right? They just do whatever they want anytime that they want it. And then when they're older and we don't have any control over them, then they are not any good in society. Now, I think we can have some debate on what is appropriate correction. I think Well, I don't want to get in the midst of that. I think that can be kind of a touchy subject for folks. But there's lots of different ideas out there about what is proper discipline, whether that's spanking or not spanking. I think older generations would agree that spanking is probably appropriate, and younger generations maybe not. Um, I think for my wife and I in our household, we've done a little bit of both. We've done different types of correction for our children, and so I do think though that the one thing that we do need to be careful for is whether you spank or anything like that. I think we need to recognize that there is a line between spanking and beating our children, and abuse and what is not abuse. So. Um, at any rate, let's see. And then some don't make any sense at all, right? Some of these proverbs, or I mean, they make sense, but they're kind of like, well, of course. So, chapter 14, verse 5, a truthful witness doesn't lie, but a false witness spews lies. Well, yeah. I mean, that's not really wisdom, is it? You're basically defining what a truthful person is. A truthful person is somebody who doesn't lie, and a false witness is somebody who spews lies all over the place. So I don't know how that was necessarily wisdom. I think it's just a fact, right? And then the last thing that I thought, which really kind of made me think of the division we oftentimes see in the church, how we find conflict, how we manage conflict. I think over the last year of my time here with you all, of course, we had the big conflict with the disaffiliation stuff, and these two proverbs, although I didn't really reflect on them at the time, these two proverbs really guided me, though, in how I handled that conflict and handled some of those things. So, chapter 15, verse 1 says, "A sensitive answer turns back wrath, but an offensive word stirs up anger." And the author of the study guide talks about this verse too, that how we respond to people makes a huge difference in how that interaction happens. I think we live in a world that is oftentimes seeking to win conflicts, right? We live in a very competitive world where, sports and business, and it's all about, winning and victory and strength and all those things. And so when we're in the midst of conflict, I think our cultural expectation is that we are going to be aggressive in the midst of that. Um, but the Proverbs suggest that no, a sensitive answer, right, helps to diffuse some of the more outlandish and um, angry and hateful response, right? A sensitive answer turns back wrath, but an offensive word stirs up anger. And then chapter 15, verse 18, hot heads stir up conflict, but patient people calm down strife. And that has certainly been my experience. I'm sure all of you know folks who are a bit have short tempers, short fuses, folks who are very opinionated, who just seem angry all the time or very passionate at least about certain topics, um, and when it's easy to get them riled up, right? So hotheads stir up conflict, which is true. When you get angry and upset, the first thing you do typically is lash out. But one of the ways that you can diffuse that is by being patient, by calming down. One of the things they oftentimes teach in conflict resolution classes is the idea that you need to meet folks in conflict by keeping a calm and steady voice, by lowering the temperature, by being patient and calm. If you meet the angry person at their level, it's just going to continue to escalate. And so it's always good to just bring that temperature down a bit and offer words of peace. So there's so much in these 5 chapters and in the study guide. I hope you enjoy it. So after you've watched this video, go ahead and go through and answer the discussion questions. So yeah, there were just those 2 things I think in correction from this week. Make sure if you're not going to be able to see other people's responses to those questions until you answer the question yourself. And so if you want to participate in the discussion, you need to at least answer. One of the things Claudia mentioned in her email is that if there was a question she just didn't feel moved to speak to, one of the things she could do is just go in and respond with like a comma or a or just a something simple like, I don't really have anything to say about this question. And then you'll be able to see other people's responses. And then maybe then somebody else's response to that question will generate something for you to respond to that will help build the conversation. So yeah, I hope you have a great week. Don't forget to email me or call me or talk to me at the church if you've got any questions or if there's anything on your mind. I'd love to hear from you. So have a blessed week. Bye.